Am I the a-hole for my response when my sister's husband commented on my husband's manhood? My husband has been sick for a few months now and recently had a surgery. My parents hosted dinner for him and invited the whole family. My sister's husband, Mike, is the tell-it-as-it-is type of man. Basically, the brutally honest type. My sister says she loves him for his honesty, but because of it, we've had issues in the past. After dinner, we were sitting down while my husband was in another room. He was getting some rest. Mike looked at me and asked if my husband was still good in bed, because he had read that when men get sick, their performance would get lower. I was floored by his question. Everyone was looking at me in silence. It was absolutely awkward. My sister smiled at me as a sign to let it go, but instead I responded, "Well, at least better than men who can't even impregnate their women." Now this is where I might be the a-hole. Mike and my sister have suffered from infertility for 10 years, and it's on Mike's side. This response caused a huge argument, and although Mike stormed off and didn't say anything, my sister went off calling me abhorrent and shaming me for going low and using her husband's infertility against him. I told her he insulted my husband's manhood, but she said I took this whole thing out of context and made it personal, since he was just talking about men in general. After the argument, she and Mike left and my mom demanded I apologize. My husband didn't even know what we were arguing about. Mom told him I was arguing with my sister over dessert. Mom said I was in the wrong for hurting my sister's feelings with what I said and told me to apologize, but I still refused. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. You just told it as it was. Of course not. You were rude, but the same type of rudeness your brother-in-law pretends to enjoy until it is used against him. Don't apologize. Next time, he won't be rude toward you or your husband, since he now knows you can be rude too. Yup, saying you're just being honest, or I'm the brutally honest type, is just a BS excuse to be rude and inappropriate. Asking about a sick man's performance in bed is not honesty. It's being an a-hole to get a reaction. Brother-in-law just didn't like the reaction he got this time. Yes, 9 times out of 10, the person who brags about their honesty is using that as an excuse to be an a-hole. Your brother-in-law is a freaking weirdo. What kind of question is that to ask when someone has been sick for months and recently out of surgery? Like, why the heck is the concern your sex life while his brother-in-law is sick? A normal person would not even think of this. Probably brother-in-law projecting. Definitely. Brother-in-law thinks he's inadequate in bed because he can't impregnate sister, so has to drag OP's husband down. Not the a-hole. His brutal honesty is not a pass to be a constant a-hole. Good job dishing it back. Don't apologize. And being brutally honest means answering a question very honestly, not asking inappropriate questions unprompted. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband that he created this mess and he needs to fix it? My husband and I always planned on having kids. It ended up happening a couple of years before we planned, due to a condom breaking. I didn't mind though. I was super happy to welcome our daughter, Belinda. A few years later, we started trying again for a second, but it took us a little while to conceive, and we ended up having to use IVF. The doctors never figured out why I couldn't get pregnant the old-fashioned way the second time, but after one round, my husband and I welcomed our son, Philip. Belinda is now 15 and Philip is 9. A close family friend of ours is going through their own infertility journey. My husband and I were discussing it when I mentioned something about IVF, and Philip asked what that was. I explained and then added, "We used that to have you." Belinda asked if we used IVF to have her. I was about to answer no and leave it at that when my husband butted in with, "No, you're here because the condom broke," laughing. Belinda immediately looked hurt. We've had the talk and discussed that sometimes condoms aren't effective, how to use them properly, and other forms of birth control. So she understood exactly what he was saying. I quickly added, "You were a surprise, but a much welcome surprise. We always planned on having kids. It just happened a few years sooner than expected." Belinda just nodded and quietly said, "Okay," but I could tell she was really upset. I later told my husband to apologize and make sure she understands that she's loved and wanted. He told me I was overreacting. I spoke with Belinda and reassured her that she was loved and wanted. She seemed to feel a little better, but still wasn't completely happy. It's been a few weeks, and Belinda has made little jabs here and there. Not in a playful way, clearly she's still hurt. She'll say things to her dad like, "Well, clearly I was some big mistake," and "Sorry for inconveniencing you." My husband got fed up and told her she was being dramatic and that he didn't mean anything by that comment. He later told me to tell her to cut it out. I said no. He said it, made her feel like crap, and hasn't spoken to her about it since. He has to deal with the consequences of that. She's a sensitive teenage girl, and that's a scary combination when they feel rejected and unwanted by their fathers. My husband is now saying I'm in the wrong. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I didn't tell him in front of her that he deserved it. He told me privately how he felt. I wouldn't undermine him in that way in front of her. Not the a-hole. He said it, made her feel like crap, and hasn't spoken to her about it since. He has to deal with the consequences of that. Why is this even a question? Yep, 1,000 moments like this, with no apologies from my parents, plus being told I'm sensitive, are why we are no contact today. Relationships shrink to the size of repair. If OP's husband values having a relationship with his daughter when she's older, he needs to learn how to apologize yesterday. My mom was a whoops baby, and so was I. My son was also. If we were honest, I think a lot of people on this earth are whoops babies. One of the best things I've ever heard to be said to a child that wasn't planned came from my grandma to my mom. Grandma told Mom, "At first I didn't know what I was going to do with you, but after you were here, I had no idea what I'd ever do without you." My mom was number 4. Maybe something along these lines from your husband may make her feel much better, but he will have to suck up his pride and not be the a-hole and have that conversation with her. Good luck. At a guess, probably 50% of babies were not planned at the time they were conceived. Doesn't make them a mistake or unwanted. My 2 sisters and I all have our birthdays in the same week, 9 months after my parents' wedding and anniversary. We do have a sibling that was probably planned, and his birthday is in a different month. I also know they had no intention of having more than 2 kids. I didn't grow up feeling unwanted as baby number 3. I was born 9 months after my mom's birthday. I know my deadbeat dad well enough to know that's probably all she got for her birthday. Not the a-hole. Your daughter is still hurt. Your husband needs to put on his big boy pants and talk to her. It's silly of him to drag it out. You can obviously prove to your daughter she's loved. After all, you liked having a child like her so much, you were willing to pay a small fortune to get one more. So to you, that unplanned pregnancy was like winning the lottery. My youngest brother was a broken condom result. It bothered him for years, until he had his first child who also was unplanned. He didn't try to hurt her. He made a stupid joke, but the joke did hurt, and it's on him to act like a grown-up and talk to her. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to give up my honeymoon suite to my sister and her newborn? My wife, 28 female, and I, 29 male, recently got married and booked a dream honeymoon at a beautiful resort. We splurged on the honeymoon suite. It's a once-in-a-lifetime trip. A week before we left, my sister, 31 female, had an emergency C-section. Mom called, asking if we could downgrade our room so my sister, her husband, and their newborn could have our suite. They didn't plan a baby moon and now want a last-minute vacation to recover. I said absolutely not. We paid a fortune for this experience. My mom blew up, calling me selfish. My sister sent crying emojis, saying she's exhausted and could really use the peace. My dad says we should do the right thing and let them have it since we can honeymoon anytime. I feel bad she had a tough birth, but we worked hard for this trip. My wife says standing firm is the right call, but now some in the family isn't speaking to us. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. So your sister and brother-in-law didn't plan ahead, and now you're supposed to just gift them your dream honeymoon suite? Because what, she had a baby? That's not how this works. They can book their own vacation like responsible adults. That's what we said too, but now we are getting backlash from my family, shaking my head. It sounds like you're traveling to this honeymoon suite? Because if so, your sister should absolutely not be traveling far from the hospital. her OBGYN, and her baby's pediatrician after birth for something so trivial as a vacation. The pediatrician would not recommend it. Baby is a newborn. Subjecting them to the outside environment with no immune system is so risky. They haven't had all their vaccines. This is irresponsible of your sister, and I would not have a part in it if I were you. And that's all on top of the fact that it's your hard-earned honeymoon, not the a-hole. Newborn babies generally can't fly for minimum a week, but generally it isn't recommended for a few months. Just explain you just want to keep the newborn safe by not traveling. I did. She ended up not going, due to the lack of passport for the newborn and her still having pain, but my family still blames me. Not the a-hole, since according to your dad, you can honeymoon anytime, why can't your sister baby moon anytime? The entitlement is crazy. Tell all of the crybaby relatives that they can pool their money and send your entitled idiot sister on her baby moon. Their idiocy is appalling. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to give a real apology to my sister-in-law after she made my life miserable on a trip? I, 40 male, have a history of health problems. I have to eat before 9 p.m. or I get nauseous, and I also need to avoid certain foods. When I met my sister-in-law, I had a broken leg and was on crutches, so I wasn't in the best condition at all. She's from a big city and repeatedly told me I should see it with her. She invited me to see an exhibition, but instead of booking somewhere close to it, she chose a place far away because it was cheaper. If she had let me know in advance, I could have saved up for a more convenient place, but she knew better because she's a native, and I'm from a small town. I trusted her because she had a car and led me to believe we'd be driving to the exhibit and back. We were supposed to go to the city on Saturday, see the exhibition, get an early night, and head home after lunch on Sunday. I didn't even need to ask for a day off, as I was on probation. No holidays or sick leave allowed, unless there was a good reason, and a trip out of town on a whim wasn't a good reason. The trip was miserable. Instead of driving, we had to use buses and trains, and we walked a lot in the pouring rain. My leg hurt from the cold and wet, and I didn't get a chance to rest. She then decided the exhibition we were supposed to see was too expensive, and we ended up doing something else. In fact, we did a lot of other things that mainly involved being dragged from one rainy street to another. I wanted to get out of the weather, so I paid for an exhibition that was the same price as the one she refused to go to. She still claims that she paid the inflated price at my insistence. There was no seating, and it was a crowded, uncomfortable space. I was upset because we queued for ages just to get out of the rain. She later claimed to everyone that she only went to the exhibit because I insisted and that it was terrible. We didn't get to eat until after 10 p.m. in some fancy restaurant she eventually decided on, but by then, I couldn't manage more than 2 to 3 bites because I needed to eat on time to avoid getting sick. I couldn't even take pain medication because I hadn't eaten, so I'm sure you can imagine how uncomfortable I was that night. I didn't sleep a wink, and we had to check out early the next morning. The next day, I was exhausted and in pain. She dragged me from one place to another, and I honestly don't even remember what we did. I begged to go home around 5 p.m. because I had to work the next day, but she kept insisting that there was more to show me. I can't even remember what I saw. I was so stressed and exhausted, so what was the point? We didn't get back to my hometown until 11 p.m., and then she went shopping while I was stuck waiting for her. I couldn't get a taxi, it was too late at night, and I didn't even know where we were. She was the one with the car, and my broken leg and fatigue made me feel very vulnerable. When we finally got to my house at midnight, I had to be up at 5 a.m. for work. She smugly said, "I'm glad I'm unemployed. I can sleep all day tomorrow." I didn't speak, but I wanted to lose it. I didn't talk to her for weeks after that. My brother reached out, saying she was upset that I didn't thank her for a great trip and that I should apologize and show some gratitude. I didn't. He started talking about me to my parents while I wasn't there, and my mother shut that down. She pointed out that I didn't get to see the exhibition we went for, that I had to go into work sleep-deprived, exhausted, and sick, or else risk losing my job. As I said, I was on probation and hadn't booked any recovery time off, as I hadn't expected to need it. My mother felt I was the one who deserved the apology. He and sister-in-law went no contact with me and my parents after that. I was the golden child, and they were my enablers, they said. After years of no contact, they reached out when they had nowhere to go and needed my parents' support. My parents are retired and bent over backward for my brother and sister-in-law. At Christmas, she came to visit my parents at their house with my brother. I always spend Christmas with my parents, so I was there. She made more jabs at me while we were alone. I ignored them, using my deaf ear as an excuse to not hear anything she said too quietly, but otherwise kept civil. She was civil when she didn't have me alone. After they left, she got my brother to text me, calling me a liar and again demanding an apology for the stuff that went on in the city, more than 5 years ago now. I sent him a bland, emotionally absent apology, saying I was sorry she was upset by my needs. He hasn't replied since. I feel like I'm being manipulated and expected to apologize for something that was completely her fault, but she's holding my brother's and parents' happiness over my head. I'm not sure if I'm overreacting or if I could handle things better. Am I the a-hole? She neglected your real medical requirements, dragged you around like a broken Sims character, and then pretended that you were unappreciative of your misery. She already deserved more than the apology you offered. Allow her to continue to fume in her victim complex. But why didn't OP speak up? I kept asking myself that while reading. Why not say, no, I would like to go to Exhibition X. I need to eat now. Can we please find a restaurant? No, thank you. I don't want to do any more sightseeing. I am sure sister-in-law tried to show OP things she was proud of in her city. If OP didn't like them, he could have said so. How did you get to 40 years old without experiencing extreme discomfort and being overwhelmed? And more importantly, what to do when that happens? I don't live in a city. I don't get overwhelmed where I live or feel unsafe. I was taken out of my comfort zone because I trusted my brother and thought sister-in-law was a very different person. I mean, she sucks, but you're a grown man. You allowed yourself to be her victim? You gotta grow a pair, bud. Fair point. Back then, I think the broken leg and crutches helped her a lot. I felt so vulnerable. I'm not a city person either, so I felt even more uncomfortable. I will not let her put me in that position again, and I won't allow myself to ever be alone with her going forward. You had a broken leg and could not say, no, I would rather stay home until my leg healed and then I will go to the city? There is a saying, when you point one finger at someone, make sure to count the 3 pointing back at you. I agree, and if I'd known we wouldn't see the exhibition anyway, I could have waited weeks, months, or just not bothered at all. She picked something I would have liked to see that was on for a week or so. I can't remember, but there was a time limit. She's taught me a lot though. Avoid crowds when already feeling vulnerable. Don't trust travel partners to look after you if you can't look after yourself. And don't travel with a broken leg unless it's work-related and unavoidable, because then you're covered.